You lop off Friday, and then you say to yourself, one or two of those other days is getting missed anyway because people are actually working but in another place. How do you set up a construct where people can actually get together in any efficient way?
That's why 5 days a week, those demands currently are not working. I've spoken to people within companies that are required to be there 5 days a week who say,
welcome back to the Future of Work Weekly Report. This week, we're diving into an issue that's been creeping up more and more in the headlines: employee engagement and retention. With return to office mandates continuing to stir the pot, we need to ask the question, are we focusing on the wrong battle? Is it really about whether people are working from home or in the office, or is the problem much deeper? Spoiler alert, it's the systems that have been broken for years, way before we started talking about remote work. Today, we're going to be talking about why the office isn't the solution to employee disengagement and why the real focus should be on fixing the leadership and engagement practices that are driving high turnover. And at the tail end of this episode, we're going to give you ways that you can actually increase employee engagement, and it doesn't have anything to do with the office. But let's go ahead and start with the obvious. Return to office mandates. Whether it's Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, or even the federal government, we're seeing more and more companies pushing employees back into the office. But let's not get distracted by the typical arguments about where people should be working. It's not just about remote work versus in-office work. That's the easy argument to make, and we've made it. The real question we need to ask is, what's the bigger issue here? And the bigger issue is broken systems. The fact is, companies haven't fixed the things that matter most: employee engagement, trust, and leadership that drive satisfaction in the workplace.
Yeah, Kristen, I think when we talk about the scope of, again, what you guys are monitoring, what you're studying, and what you're finding, I mean, what are the most important findings in this most recent report?
So we can look back in time and see that overall, over the last 20 years, the global workplace is improving. That's a good thing. But when we look at 2023 specifically, employee engagement has stagnated, well-being has declined. We also see a concerning stat with loneliness. So globally, 1 in 5 workers are reporting daily loneliness. That's absolutely cause for concern. It's higher if you're a younger worker under the age of 35. It's also higher if you are working exclusively remote. Here in the US, we also see some trends around stress that are concerning. About half of us are showing up every day at work experiencing a lot of stress the previous day. That tells us that the majority of us are struggling, and that struggle does have some pretty serious consequences. Conservative estimates put it at $8.9 trillion. That's roughly 9% of global GDP that we can attribute to low engagement. But what people tell us is that they actually enjoy work. As humans, there's purpose, there's a social connection to work. So we can see that work isn't the problem, it's the workplace.
Let's break it down. Employee engagement is the missing piece of the puzzle. When companies push employees back to the office but fail to engage with them properly, that's where disengagement and frustration happens. And when engagement drops, so does retention. Here's the truth. Gallup reports that disengaged employees can cost companies up to $2.1 million a year in lost productivity. But companies keep doubling down on outdated systems like micromanagement, lack of flexibility, and poor leadership. These systems create frustration, burnout, and yes, high turnover. Now, the push for return to office seems like an easy fix. But the data tells us that flexibility isn't just a perk. It's a core driver of engagement. Take remote-first companies and those with hybrid policies. They are seeing better retention, higher productivity, and most importantly, happier employees. Studies show that employees with more control over where they work report higher job satisfaction and are 13% more likely to stay with their current employer. Yet, companies keep leaning into rigid office mandates that fail to address the real problems employees face: burnout, lack of trust, and micromanagement.
Nick Bloom and Adam Grant both shared out a study yesterday that showed that if you give people the ability to work where they're most effective, to work from home or work from the office, when they're doing their individual work, you get a 12% boost in productivity. So kind of hard to ignore that one. On top of that, Joanne was talking about the mandates, like pushing people back even further. Besides the fact that it doesn't boost financial performance, it actually degrades employee engagement. And there's mounting evidence now that it does actually cause people to leave. And the people that are most likely to leave are people who've been there the longest, that have tenure, people who have been recently promoted because they have marketable skills, right? They're the ones that can find a job even in a tougher economy.
If it's
and the third one
tenure,
is women. There was a study that came out.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a study that came out from Upwork just in July where they polled about 1,000 different C-level executives that had done mandates. 2/3 of them said that it disproportionately caused women to quit over men, and that they couldn't replace those people fast enough, and there was a knock-on effect on their productivity.
Now, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's focus on leadership. The reality is leadership practices are the real issue here. It's not whether employees are working in a cozy home office or a company cubicle. It's about the culture and systems leaders create within these environments. According to Harvard Business Review, companies that invest in employee autonomy and trust their teams to do the work, whether from home or in office, see better engagement and lower turnover. So why are some companies continuing to push employees into the office when it's not even about where they're working? It doesn't make sense, and what they're doing doesn't actually increase collaboration, innovation, or productivity like they claim. Layoffs in disguise, anyone? Okay, let's get real. Employees don't just want to work from home. They want to feel empowered to do their best work. And that empowerment comes from leadership that isn't stuck in the past. It comes from leaders who give employees the tools, the resources, and the flexibility they need to thrive in their workplace. A report by MIT Sloan points out that employees in remote-first environments feel more trusted, more valued, and ultimately more engaged than their in-office counterparts. Why? Because remote-first companies tend to prioritize trust and empowerment, not control.
You lop off Friday, and then you say to yourself, one or two of those other days is getting missed anyway because people are actually working but in another place. How do you set up a construct where people can actually get together in any efficient way?
That's why 5 days a week, those demands currently are not working. I've spoken to people within companies that are required to be there 5 days a week who say it makes no sense. I talked to a manager at one of these large organizations who said, look, I'm in one office. The people who report to me are elsewhere. I don't care, and it is a waste of my time to tell them they have to be in 5 days a week because I don't care where they are. I just want them to perform.
And by the way, sometimes the managers aren't there 5 days a week.
And the managers don't want to be there either.
What does all this mean in terms of cost? Well, the real cost of RTO mandates isn't just about filling office spaces or making employees feel productive. The real cost is in turnover. As we already discussed, Gallup calls out that disengaged employees cost companies $2.1 million per year in lost productivity. RTO mandates are only making this worse, driving top performers out of the door. If leadership isn't addressing the core issue, employee engagement, then they're just chasing their own tails by forcing people back into the office.
Generally, the world of work, the workplaces are improving. That's a good thing. But when we look at 2023 numbers, we can see that employee engagement stagnated, well-being is on the decline. But the majority of us still say that we enjoy some version of work. It brings purpose. There is some data to suggest that there are social benefits to work. So all of this does tell us that work is not the problem, it's the workplace.
Lipton says workplaces can improve by focusing on their managers.
So while globally we're seeing engagement at 23%, the best run organizations are achieving at or above 70% of their workforce engaged. And that's driven by the majority of managers in that workplace being engaged. The best managers have one core habit in common, and that's having one meaningful conversation with their team each week.
Let's talk about the solutions, though. We focused a lot on the problem, but how can companies actually fix this engagement and retention issue? Here are a few actionable strategies that can really make a difference in your workplace. Foster a culture of trust. It all starts with trust. When employees feel trusted and empowered, they're more likely to engage. Instead of micromanaging, give employees the autonomy to manage their own schedule and work. Trust them to do the job, whether they're working from home or in the office. Leaders should always encourage open communication and transparency. Number 2, provide flexibility in work options. We've seen time and time again that flexible work arrangements are a key factor in employee satisfaction. This doesn't mean remote work. It means flexible in hours, location, and how people work. As Gallup's research shows, companies that offer flexibility have higher retention and engagement. You need to give the people the freedom to design their workday in a way that suits their lifestyle. Number 3, focus on well-being, not just profit. Employee well-being should be a priority, not just as a buzzword. This means mental health support, stress management resources, and a culture that prioritizes work-life balance or harmony. Companies need to offer resources like counseling services, wellness programs, and breaks that support employees' mental and physical health. When employees feel cared for, they're more engaged, and that typically correlates to productivity. Number 4, leadership development and training. Great engagement doesn't just come from the employees. It comes from the leaders who empower them. Investing in leadership training helps managers learn how to lead with empathy, understanding, and purpose. When leaders connect with their teams on a deeper level, they foster loyalty and engagement. Number 5, the last one, recognize and reward contributions. Employees want to know their efforts are being recognized. A culture of recognition goes a long way in increasing engagement, whether it's through public shout-outs, reward programs, or simply saying thank you. Recognition helps employees feel valued and appreciated. When people feel appreciated, they're more likely to go the extra mile. This is how you increase effectiveness and productivity, is by focusing on employee engagement.
The research shows, and this is why I really think we will not go back to this 5-day standard. I just think it's so outdated. And the major reason is that it is working. The hybrid situation is working. We're now at a point 4 years in where there's actual research coming out about this. You know, Nicholas Bloom at Stanford, you guys know him well. He has a paper that came out just in June where they looked at a hybrid, I believe it was 3 days a week. They found performance did not suffer, but what did happen is employees were happier and retention improved. And then there was another study, very recent, that came from the University of Pittsburgh that found that when companies do demand people come back and be on the premises, it actually does not affect financial performance. It doesn't improve the stock price or your quarterly earnings. And so, you know, we're seeing that it works.
There you have it. The solution isn't whether employees are working remotely or from the office. It's in the systems you have in place. By fostering trust, offering flexibility, focusing on well-being, investing in leadership, and implementing a strong culture of recognition, you can increase employee engagement and reduce turnover. Companies that get this right will thrive in the future of work. And let's stop blaming remote work and start fixing the real issues. The system that is leaving employees disengaged and burned out. After all, it's not about where employees work, it's about how they feel at work. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Future of Work Weekly Report, and we'll see you next time.